Mr. Carver and Ms. Mace, and then I think we're going to close it out.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a few more questions for Ms. Gentles this afternoon. In your opinion, is it school closures or is it classroom content that has hurt students the most over the last 2 years?
Well, to be clear, students entered into the COVID era in a bad position. They were already possessing weak math and reading skills, and those have only gotten worse because of school closures. Obviously, a child can't learn how to read. A kindergartner, a first grader can't learn how to read on Zoom, and that's really impacted their ability to read, and that's really impacted their future. The school closures have had a huge impact.
And then who do you believe is responsible ultimately at the end of the day for school closures that happened all across the country?
Well, I think it's part of the popular narrative to put the blame straight on Randy Weingarten, who is the head of the American Federation for Teachers, and I worry about that a little bit. She's absolutely a driving force, and the teachers' unions are a driving force in school closures, but there are a lot of people with responsibilities. The local leaders, the school boards, the superintendents had the responsibility to step up and recognize that children were not doing well with their mental health and with their academic achievement, and that schools needed to be open.
And then in your opinion, interventions now, what can we do now? What evidence-based interventions can we be advocating for that Congress should be addressing learning loss and getting students back up? There are millions of kids that are going to be lost. We're not going to be able to get them back to where they need to be. But what are, in your opinion, are some of the interventions that we should or could be doing now to make the environment better for learning for students who have been so negatively impacted by COVID-19 and being out of school?
Well, I think that's where the good news is. I mean, this hearing's been grim in a lot of ways. The school closures have been dreadful, and clearly there's a mental health crisis as well as an academic crisis in our country. But the good news is that student-centered interventions like high-dosage tutoring, where you have small groups or one-on-one interacting with a tutor, a teacher who's really focused on that student's individual needs and getting them caught up, that's a proven strategy to help students. And states and districts have $190 billion to spend of federal supplemental funding on top of what they have already, and they're having a lot of trouble spending it. So go ahead and spend it on the high-dosage tutoring. The state like Tennessee is doing that. They have a statewide tutoring corps, and I'd love to see that happening in more states and districts. The problem is that some of the districts are having trouble with their contracting. The Wall Street Journal reported this week that the LA school district has not spent a penny of its ARP funding. That was the biggest amount of funding that was pushed out from Washington. Not one penny of the ARP funding that they've received, and some of that was contracting issues. They had promised to do a tutoring program, and they haven't even lined up the contracts yet.
Wow, thank you, and I yield back.